Armstrong the Mouse, Part 2. Flying Mice and Fantastic Adventures. The mouse hole led straight into a large room with a low ceiling, and what the little mouse saw there took his breath away. Flying machines, hang gliders, and all sorts of weird and wonderful apparatus hung from the ceiling or stood on the floor. It looked just like the human museum above, but these were mouse flying machines. "What is this place?" whispered the little mouse in awe. "Here you can see the history of mouse aviation," said a voice that echoed through the room. "How wonderful that you've come. So you got my message." Out of the shadow of a large flying machine stepped an old grey mouse. He smoothed his stubbly whiskers, straightened his glasses, and very formally stretched out a paw to greet the little mouse. With his other front paw he leaned on a walking stick. "I heard about your discoveries, and I thought this place might be of interest to you. You see, there was once a time when nothing was impossible for us mice. We travelled the world and even learned how to fly. But at some time or another, mice became interested in other things, and gradually they forgot all about their flying ancestors." The little mouse listened in amazement to the old mouse's tales. He was fascinated. So there had been flying mice in the old days, and if a mouse could learn to fly then, maybe it was possible for a mouse to fly to the moon now. "I shall be the first mouse on the moon," he cried. The next day, the little mouse travelled back to his hometown. His head was full of ideas and ambitious plans. The old mouse in the museum had given him lots of helpful advice. Study human knowledge. Some humans are really clever. And so the mouse spent the next few weeks in the municipal libraries, and sometimes he even slipped into the university. But he soon found out that the moon was a lot farther away than he had thought, and nothing and nobody had ever flown so high before. Higher than the clouds, higher even than the air one breathes. The moon circled in the icy, airless nothingness of space. The spacesuit. "So many problems to be solved," sighed the little mouse, but he did not allow himself to be discouraged. The first step was to find a way in which he could simply survive in space. He would have to wrap himself up safe and warm and take enough air in his luggage to be able to keep breathing. "It could work," he squeaked through his whiskers, and he made a little drawing. Next he would need some building materials, a lot of building materials, and he already had a good idea how he could test his spacesuit. The space catapult. The spacesuit worked. The test was a complete success. The mouse would be able to breathe in space just as he could underwater, but the test must have given the goldfish the shock of his life. The next task was a lot more difficult. How can one get to fly so high? To take off from the Earth and fly to the moon? Balloon? Airplane? For days and days this question went round and round the little mouse's brain. Perhaps it might work with a big sling or some kind of catapult. Once again he made a little drawing. "I need a strong metal container and a lot of rubber bands," or something like that. It turned out to be simpler than he thought. All he needed was to adapt an alarm clock and get hold of a pair of tights. In no time he was sitting inside his brand new space capsule, ready for the first test flight. With a quick pull, the little mouse released the anchor. Boing! The elastic tights straightened to their full length, and catapulted pilot and space capsule high into the sky. Everything was a whirl. The acceleration pushed the little mouse hard against the pilot's seat. "I'm flying!" he shouted, although he hadn't a clue which way up and which was down. The space capsule zoomed in a high arc over the roofs and the chimneys. But inevitably, the capsule began to lose impetus. "Oh no! Have I stopped flying? I'm falling!" cried the little mouse in dismay. With a great effort, he bent forward and pulled on a string. There was a whee and a whoosh, and a white cloth shot out the back of the alarm clock, putting a brake on the downward dive.